The Control of Water Reabsorption in the Kidneys by ADH by KayScience.com. Blood water levels are monitored by a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is represented here by the letter H. This here is the blood supply that flows past the hypothalamus. And in this image, I'm currently showing higher water levels, which shows the person is hydrated. However, what happens if the person is dehydrated, so there are lower water levels in the blood? The hypothalamus will detect the lower water levels in the blood, and the pituitary gland, which is denoted by the letter P here, secretes a hormone called ADH. ADH. ADH stands for antidiuretic hormone, ADH. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. So ADH is going to act on the collecting duct membrane to increase water reabsorption into the blood, and this is how it does it. This here is the collecting duct, and this is the bladder. This here is the collecting duct. This is the bladder, and this is the partially permeable membrane of the collecting duct. These are the blood vessels that surround the collecting duct, from which water is going to osmose from the collecting duct and into the blood vessels. These are the blood vessels that surround the collecting duct, so these letters W represent the low water levels in the blood. So as you can see here, there are currently low water levels in the blood that have been detected by the hypothalamus. There is currently higher levels of water in the collecting duct. So remember, ADH is secreted by the pituitary gland into the blood. ADH is secreted by the pituitary gland. The ADH is then going to bind onto the collecting duct's membrane. So as you can see here, the ADH is binding onto the membrane of the collecting duct. So ADH binds the collecting duct membrane, ADH. And what I'm drawing here is the collecting duct with a increased permeability. So the membrane of the collecting duct gets more permeable. So that I've drawn that by it appearing like there are larger pores in the collecting duct. So ADH binds the collecting duct membrane. So the membrane of the collecting duct gets more permeable. This means water is then able to be transported by osmosis from a high concentration inside the collecting duct through the partially permeable membrane of the collecting duct to the lower concentration of water in the blood vessels. So this would decrease the water concentration inside the collecting duct, but increase the water concentration inside the blood. So remember, the collecting duct becomes more permeable. This is due to ADH. This is due to ADH. Because the collecting duct is more permeable, more water is then reabsorbed into the blood from the collecting duct. More water is then reabsorbed into the blood from the collecting duct. And because it's water transport, it is osmosis. Osmosis. So now there is an increased level of water in the blood and a lower level of water in the collecting duct, which means that less water will be collected in the bladder. So there is more water in the blood, less water in the collecting duct, therefore less water in the bladder. So you'll urinate less because the water's been reabsorbed into the blood. This means you'll have darker urine. Your urine will be more dark and less. There'll be less of it too. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. So the body is dehydrated. There are low levels of water in the blood in the body. So now someone has drunk excess levels of water. They've drunk too much water, so now they're really hydrated. So now they have higher water levels in the blood. This is detected by the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus will send a signal to the pituitary gland to stop releasing ADH. So where the pituitary gland secreted ADH with low levels of water in the blood, it is now going to say decrease the ADH levels in the blood. So this here is the collecting duct with a high permeability to water. There's now increased water levels in the blood. So remember that the ADH caused there to be an increased permeability in the collecting duct. ADH was bound to the membrane of the collecting duct. So now there is increased blood water levels, and there's too much ADH in the blood, and there's too much ADH in the blood. This means that the ADH levels are going to decrease. So ADH doesn't bind the collecting duct's membrane. With far less ADH being bound to the collecting duct's membrane, you're going to see a decreased permeability of the collecting duct's membrane, which causes the collecting duct to have a less permeable membrane, as you can see here, which means that less water is reabsorbed into the blood. So the excess water is not going to be reabsorbed into the blood, and instead it's going to move through the collecting duct and into the bladder. Excess water is transported to the bladder, which will make a more clear urine, and you'll also produce more urine. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. Press pause to practice using those key words. The answers will follow. Press pause to go through your answers and make any corrections to your mistakes. Press pause to answer the questions. The answers will follow. And if you're stuck, just rewatch the video. Press pause to go through your answers and make any corrections to your mistakes.